morning, everyone. My name is Vivienne from Malaysia. Selamat pagi. There are many things that I could share about how EE has impacted my nation or church, but today I want to share with you how the ministry of EE has been a great tool to disciple one person to become like Jesus. I want to share with you the story of one lady from my church. Her name is Pam. She has been a Christian all her life, but worshipping elsewhere different from my church. When she first came to visit our church about 8 years ago, she brought along her husband and 3 kids. We shared the gospel with them and they received assurance of salvation. Now at that time, Pam was a hard person to work with. If she didn't get her way, she would make a big fuss, and there were many outbursts of anger, shifting blame, and accusing the church leadership at times. When her daughter wanted to be trained in the XEE semester, she reluctantly allowed her to join, but even so limiting the time that her daughter could go out for OJT. And so, because she did all this because she felt that the training was wasting time, and because she didn't believe in evangelism. 3 years ago, Pam finally agreed to be trained after being asked many times by the church leadership. This training totally changed her life. She was once a person who would like to push her ideas forward and to talk without stopping, and now she has learned to listen to others and to build meaningful relationships. For the first time in her life of 40 years, she witnessed to someone and they gave their life to Jesus. She is now a wonderful servant in God's house, having the perspective that serving in the greeters department or in the hospitality department is not about how well we do the job, but it is about creating an environment to help people find Jesus. EE Malaysia has successfully translated the XEE materials into our local language, Malay, which is the dominant spoken language among the Muslims in my country. We had the privilege of taking this training with a missions team from my church to conduct the XEE clinic in Malay for the first time in Sabah, in another state in Malaysia. That was the first time that Pam had been on the missions team, and wow, what an impact it had on her. She had to thread through muddy fields under the moonlight to get to one prospect's home. Her shoe broke climbing up a makeshift staircase to another prospect's home, and she had to lead a team to do street evangelism in the mall for the first time. Through this, she's so joyful because she now realizes that the suffering she had to go through is nothing compared to the joy of leading someone to Christ. This story didn't happen in 5 days, it didn't happen in 1 month, it didn't happen in a year. This story happened over the last 8 years, and Pam's life has been and will continue to be transformed to the glory of God. Let me encourage you who are discouraged or feel like giving up. Psalm 121 tells us that our help comes from the Lord. If we don't see the results now, be patient. God has been transforming lives from the very beginning, and I have faith that He is actively on the move in the hearts of men, that one day very soon, everyone will hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thank you.
Welcome to EE's Leadership Development Institute. This is Module 7, entitled Effective Communication, and we are in Session 3, Learn to Communicate Big Ideas in 3 Minutes. We are so happy to have Vivienne Voon join us from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and share her insights on this topic. Vivienne, can you tell us a little about yourself, please?
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi.
Good to be joining you guys. I'm currently a pastor, pastoring a small congregation of about 30 to 40 people, and it's in bilingual, so English and Mandarin, and I've been doing this for about 2 years plus. Before that, I was an accountant. Yeah.
And can you tell us, how did you come to know Christ?
Well, I grew up in a Christian family, and I think I made a decision to follow Christ when I was about 8. So my dad prayed with me, and so yeah, that ever since then I've been serving in my church regularly, and of course with EE as well.
That is great. We are so thankful to be meeting with you today on the subject of effective communication. Recently,
Thanks
you
for-
gave a 3-minute talk at the Congress of Nations. My next questions will be regarding that talk.
Okay.
How do you go about preparing the big idea for a presentation like the one you did at the Congress of Nations?
Well, firstly and most importantly, I think what made it impactful was because I firstly had to identify what kind of audience I was talking to. And it doesn't matter what presentation you're giving, whether it's 3 minutes or something longer, you always have to identify who is your audience. And then you're able to, and because I knew it was a congress and people came from all over the world and everyone was involved in the EE ministry. So I wanted to give something to them that was meaningful, that had something to do with EE, but at the same time, because I'm a pastor as well, I wanted to show, EE is not just impacting the results, the profession rates, or the number of clinics, but really it's actually changing lives in the church, on the ground, on a day-to-day basis, and that's where I started. So after determining who the audience is, I went to the person who invited me to speak. I tried to make sure and clarify what the requirement was, because when someone says to you, go up there, speak for 3 minutes, there's so many things you can talk about. So I really wanted to know what the premise was and how far I had, and what was my job up there. Was it to encourage someone? Was it to give some facts, to give a report? So I found out that I was supposed to just say anything that's inspiring. So, okay, that's a very wide spectrum to start with. So after that, what I did was to list out some ideas that I had, knowing that this is the audience that I'm speaking to. And I decided that I wanted to say something that would encourage them to keep on doing the ministry. And I knew from having different conversations with people that in some countries, the EE ministry, the leaders were getting some discouragement because they weren't seeing the results that they wanted to, but yet they felt like God was still calling them to do it. So I wanted to encourage them from my point of view that, God is doing a work, and what you are doing is important. So when you're preparing for something so short, I would say really think about what the audience is going to get out of it at the end of 3 minutes. It's not just about standing there to give facts, because they can read from a fact sheet or they can read from a report. So it's not about giving facts, it's about inspiring, it's about telling a story and going and having them go away with something very solid. So think about the ending, think about what kind of audience and how they will receive the message that I was going to prepare. So after I determined all this, I listed out the things that I wanted to say, and I chose the topic that I wanted to talk about. I actually did go up to the person who invited me to speak to bounce the idea off the person, to say, hey, I was thinking about talking about this. What do you think? Is it something appropriate? And the person said, yeah, go ahead. So that's how I started to choose the topic.
Once you have the big idea, what are the practical steps you take in getting that big idea into an outline form?
Okay, because I'm only given 3 minutes, I have to really plan what I want to say. And like I said before, have the ending in mind, start with the ending. And from there, work backwards. And because I chose to tell a testimony of somebody, so the story was pretty easy, just go with the story. And because I was standing in front of a large crowd of people that I don't know, I think it's always good to briefly just introduce yourself, what I'm doing. I introduce my ministry, just very briefly. But what I literally did was write down every word I wanted to say, write down everything. And when I was preparing, because I just write everything down, I had time when I was preparing to cancel out the things that I didn't like and to adjust and to rephrase the things that I wanted to say. So also bearing in mind, because this is speaking to an audience that is from a different cultural backgrounds, I didn't want to say something that meant something else to another culture. So I was very aware that the words that I used had to be simple, had to be straightforward, and not too fancy in the language as well. So, and also because I only had 3 minutes, when telling a story, sometimes we go off track. We would say stuff that's not really important to the main plot. So because I had time to write everything down, I could actually cancel out the stuff that was not relevant to the main story, and had more time to, in fact, give a proper encouragement at the end of it. So I had time to think about what Bible verse I wanted to use, what I would say to encourage them, and so write everything down and adjust from there. Yeah.
How do you limit your presentation to just 3 minutes?
Well, because you have everything down on paper, I actually time myself. When I was reading through, after writing everything down, I would read through again, and I think I read through it a few times. And after reading through a few times, I read it out loud as well, and I had a timer with me. And every time I would go, if I went over time, I would cancel out something else. So from there, you're able to adjust to make sure it's only 3 minutes. And the other thing also is, when I write my notes, I would usually write it in blocks. So what I mean is, because if it's in blocks, if on the day of the presentation I see that I'm going a little bit over time, I would actually skip a whole block of information. So, and these blocks, the blocks that I can skip are those that are not relevant to the main plot of the story, but are extra information that's useful and encouraging as well. So because it's how you prepare your notes, if you prepare it in a way that it's easy to cancel out the whole block of information, then you're able to move on with the time and keep to the time. And it was very useful that on the presentation day, they had a clock up there to show how much time was left and whether it was 1 minute left or 30 seconds left. And when it came to 30 seconds left, you want to finish up, you want to end. So those blocks that you are able to skip those and come to the ending, because the ending is where you have spent the most time thinking through. And that's how you want to end well. You don't want to end on a haphazard note. You want to end with a strong encouragement to really inspire somebody.
What suggestions would you give to others who want to learn how to communicate big ideas in 3 minutes?
I think I've mentioned this before, but I think it's so important. So many times people just go up there saying what they want to say. But if you had prepared and done your research to know who the audience is, what are their needs, and what kind of message would be best received. So in certain audiences, if you know you're talking to leaders, you would want to say something that's relevant to leaders. If you know you're talking to church members or non-Christians, even, you want to tailor your message differently. It could be the same message, but the way you deliver it is so different to each type of audience. So my advice to prepare well and to give something impactful, always know who your audience is, their age group, their demographics, their cultural background. Really pay attention to that and listen to your message with their ears, if that makes sense. Listen from their perspective. And of course, sometimes when people go on and on and on, your audience gets bored and they fall asleep and they lose their thought process. So sometimes it's good to add in some humor, connect with the audience, touch their hearts, and really, if you're given 3 minutes to say something impactful, it should be something you've thought through, not winging it, not going up there and wasting time, because you're giving you're given a chance to share what God has been doing in your ministry and what God has been doing in another part of the world, in this instance in the Congress. So yeah, I think if you only take away one big idea from this conversation, remember who your audience is, think about it, think about them, think about what would be useful to them, and really pray about what God is saying to them, so that you can also say the same things that God is saying to them on that wavelength. Yeah, I think that sums it up.
Vivienne, is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, thank you. In anything that we do, I think it's always good to get good feedback. So whether today we're talking about effective communication, I think the only way that we can improve is always to get good feedback, asking the people around us what they think, and don't just accept a good or not so good answer. Not when your friends say, "Oh, it was good," don't just accept that. Really ask them what was good about it, so that I can keep doing that. Or what could I improve more, so that I could change. And I do that a lot, so a little bit insecure, but I cherish this feedback and I take it to heart, and that's how we improve. So I really want to encourage all of you listening to this, because what you do is so important to the ministry all around the world, and I hope you give it your very best shot in the ministry, and see so many people getting better in the way that they communicate and in the way that they present the gospel even to the non-Christians. So yeah, thank you.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Vivienne, for sharing your thoughts and your advice on the subject of effective communication. I know all the LDI participants will learn a lot from this interview. And may God bless you in the work you're doing in Malaysia. Have a great day.
God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.